We got a lot to talk about, guys. Oh, we're here. We're live. Fantastic. I hope I'm not super loud in everybody's earphones, but welcome to Press A to Start Episode 2. If you didn't manage to catch Episode 1, you can find the episode in the showcase, which is conveniently located in the Google Hangout event on Google+, or it would be linked on teatimeanimation.com shortly after the interview. My name is Lana Bachynski. I'm the co-founder of Tea Time Animation and currently an animator for Blizzard Entertainment. If you've never heard of Tea Time Animation before, we are an all things animation community that was founded in San Francisco around 2010 by a small group of us who wanted to get more out of our education than our school was providing for us. Now, Tea Time's mission is dedicated to all those aspiring towards a career in animation. We are a safe space to ask questions about the industry, gain insight on helpful tips and tricks, and to post and receive feedback on your work. Finally, we take pride in our professional outreach program, which is bringing you things like this. We facilitate monthly lectures by industry professionals in both San Francisco and Pittsburgh to help you take your work to the next level. We have over 1,300 students and professionals in our online communities alongside our 2 local chapters, and Tea Time is an invaluable networking resource for the animation community. If you are looking to get involved, please contact your local chapter for more information. Or if you don't happen to live in San Francisco or Pittsburgh, feel free to start a chapter of your own. Please reach out to us at info@teatimeanimationclub.com. Did I say that right? My brain is just fried already. More on how to contact us later. In the meantime, let's jump right into it here. We have a lot of questions and not a whole lot of time to go through them all. Right now I am sitting here. I will let them introduce themselves. We are short one fellow and he will be joining us later, but let's start it off. I'm going to go down the line here as I see it, and let's start off with Madame Careena Higgins. Please introduce yourself, say a little bit about your background, what you're currently working on, if you can, and how long you've been in the industry.
Okay, my name is Careena Higgins. I'm an animator at Blizzard Entertainment, and I am currently working on Heroes of the Storm, which is our latest game that we're working on at the moment. I've been in the industry for 8 years now. So my background is I studied Bachelor of Animation at Griffith University in Australia, and I moved to America just over 2 years ago now to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Before Blizzard, I was working at THQ Studios in Australia.
Fantastic. All right, Dennis.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
So I'm Denny Jovic. I'm an animator at Blizzard. I'm also working on Heroes of the Storm. I've been in the industry for like 8 years now, so funny enough, same amount of time as Careena. Let's see, what else? So my background, I went to the Art Institute of Schaumburg, which is in Illinois, and I was in game art and design, and when I first started there, I was aspiring to be like an environment artist until I found a friend of mine who I wanted to be better than. So I was like, I can beat that guy. So then I picked up animation, and me and him went back and forth and competed all throughout school, and we kind of developed into animators. So that was my background with animation. My first job out of school was in mocap, so I saw that there was a mocap question.
It's coming up.
I'm more than happy to talk about it later.
Easy on spoilers. Okay. We want to pretend like this is super organic. Just something just right and left out of my brain.
That's right.
Michael Cuevas will hopefully be joining us later. He got a little bit caught up at work. We're not sure exactly when he'll be joining us, but hopefully sooner rather than later. I will let him introduce his hearty background on his own. So first things first, I think a very popular question that we get all the time is what prompted you to pursue your career in animation? Denny, you sort of touched on that a little bit, so let's jump back to Careena here for a second. And what got you started?
I started out drawing flipbook cartoons when I was a kid. I wanted to be a 2D animator, and specifically I wanted to be a 2D character animator at Disney Animation Studios. which was my time capsule in high school. But when I was at university, to support myself during school, I worked at a game store. And that was when my head switched that animation isn't just for movies. There's like a whole range of things. And I started focusing strictly on games. That was my a passion at the time. So. It still is.
Well, we'd hope so. We'd hope it would still be a passion for you. This is one of my favorite questions. I am, for anybody who knows Tea Time or knows me, I am, pretty fresh out of being a student, and I know that when I was an intern 2 years ago on the team with you guys, there was sort of this mental switch that happened. I always knew I wanted to work in games, but there's so many things that I was sort of surprised by. So thinking back to when you were still a student, what would you say is the largest discrepancy between what your vision of what it was like to work in games and what it actually was like to work in games?
Did you want to go first, Denny?
I'll let you go first, Careena. I'll think about that one.
The biggest discrepancy, I think it's the multiple departments. In college, you're doing you explore everything because you don't know exactly which role, and you think there's only one position for animation, but there's lots of different avenues that you can go down. There's visual effects animation, there's the stop motion animation, there's the UI animation, there's a whole bunch of different fields, and I think that was the biggest discrepancy. Is there isn't just a modeler, an animator, a texture artist. There's every other thing in between, and I think getting the basic skills is important, but never feel like you're trapped in one position. It just opens up. As soon as I got in the industry, I was just like, wow. And there's constantly new ones being added every day too. I think that was the biggest discrepancy, because your classes are just modeling and animating, and they don't say visual effects animator for particles or weapons, or environment prop modeler. There's a whole bunch of different things.
So before I let Denny cut in here, you had classes that were so specifically broken down that way? Like you had classes for environment and prop modeling?
No, that's my point.
Oh, I was like, that sounds crazy. That sounds so specific.
It was modeling class and rigging, and then it was the animation, acting for animation. But when I got into the industry, I was like, wow, there's so many other things that you could focus purely on weapons, and your entire career can be nothing or organic animation, and quadruped animation. There's people that get jobs and all they do are quadrupeds, beasts and stuff for films. That's amazing. That was the discrepancy that I didn't realize, that there were a lot more opportunities than I thought. You don't just become an animator. There's a whole bunch of specialized.
But what's your emphasis? Yeah, fantastic. What about you, Denny?
So I think the biggest thing for me was, I guess when I was in school working, I didn't really think too much about, I knew I wanted to work in games, but I didn't really think about how animation fits into games and how it all works. And so I guess in school I was like, yeah, of course, you just animate a dude jumping over a thing and running and doing all this thing, and I thought it was just one giant animation. And I didn't realize how many broken up animations there are actually in video games. And it's just nuts in how it all gets pieced together and blends together nicely, and that just blew my mind when I it all clicked. I'm like, oh, that's how they do that. Okay, that makes sense.
So did you find yourself pleasantly surprised that you weren't animating sort of extravagant, extremely long scenes and transitions, or was it sort of like?
Right. I think it kind of it almost felt like Lego pieces. I can take all these different kinds of animations and piece them up however I want to create all new things and different sequences and stuff. And that was just kind of a cool thing to me. So.
It's a beautiful image as well.
Mm.
Really, I like that. That's good. We'll tweet that later.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Okay. On the note of Twitter, for anybody listening, if you find you have a question and we're in this moment, you can either comment it directly onto the YouTube live stream, or you can tweet at us at TeaTimeAnimates, and I'll make sure that we get your question asked to the crew here. But now that you're employed, I suppose, what would you say is sort of the flip side of that? What do you think is the most common misconception that the general public, not necessarily students, but just sort of anybody has about what you do at work?
I guess the number one thing is that film animators are better than game animators, and that film is the mecca. And if you're not in film, you're not a good animator. That was one thing I had to kind of fight with when I was an animation mentor. Was just like nobody really cared too much about video games, and when you told them you worked in video games, it was kind of like, oh, they wanted to talk to the film guys, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just the realization that the game industry has really caught up to the film industry as far as like quality, and that it's not just like I'm a game animator, I'm a film animator. It's like, no, I'm a really good animator. Period. I just prefer games. So I think that's one preconceived notion that I think people need to like get out of their heads. It's okay to work in games.
Yeah, that's good. Good. What about you, Careena?
It's faster paced, definitely, and as a result of what Denny was touching on before, all the Lego pieces. Yeah, but yeah, I think exactly the same.
Yeah, do you find that there is this animosity, like when you talk like currently to people? Like, what about when you talk to other professionals, either in or outside of the industry? Do you feel like there's still this film pipe dream that people are constantly raving over, or do you feel like there's more of an understanding?
I think generally Pacific. If I say I'm an animator to someone who's not in the industry, then they immediately think, oh, Pixar. That's the definition of animation. And then I have to explain game animation. And then they think, when you say I'm a game animator, they think of the trailers, of the movie trailers. And then you have to explain, no, someone has to animate when the characters move in game. That is also an animation position. So yeah, it's you always have to explain to the nth degree.
Or people just assume you design the heroes. And I'm like, no, I don't design the heroes.
Yeah.
Just animate them, make them move. That's it.
Something I forgot to mention before, just because we're going into this next question here, and you guys need to tell me if it's a little too forward or not. But none of our opinions represent or reflect any of that of Blizzard Entertainment's. They have graciously allowed us to chat openly and willingly, letting you guys know where we work, so you can hopefully ask like questions that particularly intrigue you about what we're doing. However, this is not an official Blizzard operation. This is a tea time animation operation, and nothing we do or say or incidentally probably swear is a reflection of Blizzard Entertainment or their values. So with that in mind, can either of you explain to the tea timers a bit about the pipeline and how does it differ from film, and what is it? I'll wait till the next part. But explain to us a bit about the pipeline and how it is different from film.
So I think at film you have to plan shots, and well, I think the biggest thing is for film you have a set camera and you're posing and animating your hero to that set camera. So you don't really care about what it looks like in other camera angles. All you care about is their silhouette. Whereas in video games, you constantly have to be aware of every single angle and every single silhouette that can appear because you never know like when it's going to be used. Now, our game is kind of in a different situation because it's a top-down camera, but a lot of like third-person shooters or any kind of like characters where they can be seen from all angles really need to be aware of that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, in a lot of cases in the first-person shooters, there's two animation sets, one for the first-person view and then one for you looking at other characters running around. Yeah, that's also that you don't. It's more body mechanics and less acting. So there's a lot of the time, like I remember I was working on DreamWorks Megamind, the game, and we sent our DreamWorks were surprisingly really involved with the process, and we sent all our animations to DreamWorks and like all the information from the game to review, and we just created little play blasts in Maya of all the character pieces. They came back with all this feedback that was specific to the camera angle used in the play blasts, and I remember my boss just going, "Oh, I don't understand that. You know, you choose a specific pose and you think that looks great, but then you turn the character 45 degrees and nothing works." And so a lot of the time you will have less of a good pose from one angle, just so it looks better from all of the other angles, and that's the biggest discrepancy is your sort of character animation has to appeal to 360 degrees.
Yeah, yeah. So what is it like starting? You keep saying the word hero, Denny. So when you start a hero, can you walk us through what it's like animating a hero start to finish?
Sure. The model's created and the rig is placed, and then it's handed off to us. And from there, usually the character already, because Blizzard has a very deep lore, with all of their video games, they usually have a set history and background for that character. So the first thing you want to do is research that character. What's his vibe? What's his or her story? Are they mean? Are they sexy? Are they whatever, casual? And the next thing I do is I go and find any kind of concept art I can find about that character. And sometimes it'll be a situation like Thrall, for example. He's an orc. So all I care about, I don't really need to find Thrall images. I can just find an orc with a hammer. That's all I can find. So I'll just go everywhere and find vibe and feel. And then from there I'll pose out a character, and that'll really determine what the rest of his kit is going to be. I'll start with a stand, then do his walk, and then from there, the rest of it just kind of falls in place. But really setting that foundation of the character is really important. So.
Fantastic. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm cutting out a bit on my end, but I think we should.
We should what?
You there?
Hello. We lost her.
Am I back?
There you are.
Hello. I'm sorry. I was chatting, and then I'm like, neither of you are moving, and there's no sound in my ears. I think I heard the tail end of what you were saying, Denny. Or I think I heard it to the end. So, what would you find to be the most challenging about your day-to-day work? And then after that, we've got a question from Katie Better on Twitter.
Do you want me to answer, or Careena?
The most challenging? Yeah,
Hi there.
Challenging is what Denny already touched was because there's an enormous history is being true to that history, because the fans already know these characters and they've been with these characters for 10 years, and we've been at Blizzard for 2 years ourselves. We weren't there way back when, so we have to make sure that we hit all the key parts, that love is still there, and that recognition, particularly when we're grabbing character for our particular game. We're grabbing characters from Diablo or all these other different universes and combining them into the one. That's really, really, really important. But yeah, the most difficult part, I think, for me personally, is the subtle animation and getting that through in a game where your camera angle is very far away, which I know Denny is really, really good at the subtle stuff.
So when it comes to the history of these characters, it's the history of these characters, but you're bringing something so new. Do you find that you are still creatively satisfied in that you have a little leeway to put yourself in this, and you're not just trying to emulate something that will read it as true in fans' minds, or is doing some sort of emulation enough, or how these sort of heavy characters with so much on their shoulders?
You kind of cut out a little bit, but I'm assuming you're asking about whether we take our own spin on a hero or not, based on other franchises.
Based upon your own flavor, your own personal flavor, and if that's creatively satisfying for you.
I think it's kind of cool to put your own spin on a character, because how I would approach that character might be different than Careena approaches it, or how you might approach it, and it's fun to kind of put your own identity on a hero.
Easter eggs.
What's that?
All the Easter eggs you put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun to kind of put your stamp on that kind of history, that's already been established.
Yeah, cool. So going to Twitter now from Katie Better, she is curious what everyone's favorite actions that they love to and or have to act out on their desk at their desk. I assume she means like for reference.
I'm always standing up and shifting my weight. I'll stand up at my desk with my, I always forget I have headphones on. I'm always standing up and then reacting. But I stand up and I always, if I'm, particularly with attack animations, like characters like Zeratul who have like a really ninja-like style, you can lose your footing, and I always end up standing up and doing this, and then and then I just go back to animating.
I actually find it entertaining to, like, I was posing a character the other day, and it was a female character, and so I was working with one of our character modelers, and I just kind of stood up and did, the nice little like female pose, and he's like, no, don't do that. Find a female to do it. And I'm like, no, I can do it. What's wrong? It's a lot of fun.
The guys as well. I do that with Tychus. I'm like, rubbing my nose.
People are like, wow, Careena grabs her crotch a lot. I don't know.
I think the animation pit is fun to watch if you're not an animator, because you're like, man, these people are crazy.
I think especially since, the arrival of the standing desks, it makes it easier to sort of do it without thinking about it, without the headphones snapping. You just sort of standing there, and then you find yourself, bouncing in a particular way, or like sort of walking back and forth in front of your desk, just seeing how your feet or your hips are moving. I always find I do that, and then I always end up looking like just ahead of me at somebody just looking away, because they're stepping. They like caught me doing it. Yeah.
Particularly when you're doing dance.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, those dances, ridiculous. So speaking of reference, these are really segueing good together. It makes my heart happy. So I always love talking to animators about motion capture. I think it is an exciting, or there's always some sort of, like Denny earlier, like ready to jump on the good side of it. But I know it's a bit of a sore subject for a lot of people. I know particularly several really talented animators who've lost out on good work because people discount their ability due to having a reel full of motion capture. So what do you guys find to be the biggest pros and cons of that technology? And are you for or against it? Or what are your thoughts on motion capture? It's been around a while now, so.
I'll let Careena start, because...
Yeah, yours will...
Yeah.
I'm going to be simple. I'm totally for it. I think the biggest issue with it is that people don't properly understand the use of it, particularly the difference between the use of it in film and the use of it in games. My understanding is that in games you use it, you use the motion capture data as the animation and then you add to it, whereas in film you're using it as reference, and in a lot of the cases that you will reanimate the existing mocap data. Yeah, I'm totally for it.
I think people, when they hear mocap, they think of the Polar Express and how horrible that was.
That uncanny valley.
Yes, and so people are like, well, mocap's awful, and so mocap is good if used properly. In a game like Heroes of the Storm, I don't see a use for it. Maybe a game like StarCraft, where there's people talking to each other in dialogue, they're just standing around. Mocap is a godsend because you can pump out so many different variations so quickly, and honestly, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And it's just a different kind of skill set to know mocap, and I think it's good to know it and know how to use it. That doesn't make you a bad animator. Doesn't make you, like you don't know anything about animation. If anything, it kind of just makes you more well-rounded and gives you an appreciation of mocap.
So would you suggest that students learn motion capture before going into the industry? I know that's not necessarily the easiest thing to obtain access to.
So
when did you learn mocap? Did you learn it in your first job? You learned it while you were in school?
So it was my first job. I actually worked at a motion capture studio, and I did everything from putting the markers on people to recording it to directing shoots to actually cleaning up the motion capture data, then applying it to a rig, then actually cleaning up the animation. So I went from start to finish, and what was the first question again? What was the first part of that?
First part of that was, sorry, I was replying to people on Twitter. The first
But
part of it,
anyways, mocap is amazing.
the first part of it was, when did you learn it, and would you recommend that students try and learn it
Okay,
while
so
they're in school?
I would recommend you learn keyframe first. Don't jump into mocap because I think you might use mocap as a crutch and as like, look at my awesome animation. It's like, it's mainly mocap. Like, you should know the principles. It's kind of like, this is gonna be a really lame analogy, but it's kind of like Picasso. Picasso knew how to draw and draw really, really well. He did not just paint those crazy stuff because he's a bad artist. He knew the foundations and chose to do it that way. So, yeah.
That's like one of my favorite artistic references. I think that's a perfect reference.
There you go. First Legos, now Picasso. What else you gotta do?
All into the spectrum. I think that also goes to something that I think Careena and Cuevas were talking about earlier about, claiming your style as something when really it's like, well, you have to learn. You can't have a style until you can't break rules until you know the rules. You can't have your style until you know your foundations.
Right.
And that's sort of the same thing. We have a question here from the Mustang 29 writes, if I'm wanting to become a cinematic artist in the game industry, what types of classes do you think I should be taking at the university I attend? And what should I be doing and practicing? It ends there. What should he be doing and practicing? Probably outside of his schoolwork?
Oh, okay. I would recommend the acting for animators class, specific for cinematics, and also live showing. You can do that outside of the class as well. I find that stuff's really, really important for a cinematic role, being able to show emotion in your pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going along that, really, really concentrating on the face. That's one thing that our games, for example, we don't really need to animate the face. It's just really just a jaw. Except for like portraits, that's when we really get into like the facial animation. But if you can really nail facial animation, you will find a job in cinematics. They will take you.
Yeah, that's good. So, is there anything that you regret having not taken advantage of while you were still a student?
I think for me it was being more well-rounded as an artist. I don't consider myself a good artist. I don't draw. I'm more of a straight-up computer guy, and I wish I kind of trained more on drawing in general, because I think the people that can draw, like Lana and Careena, are ahead of me because of that. They have a stronger foundation, and I've had like more of an uphill climb. So I would recommend you learn to draw.
Funny, I was going to say, I wish I gave myself more time for staging and rendering at the end of assignments. I always, I would spend all the time animating, and then it came time to render, and I would inevitably have issues with codecs, getting the video to play, rendering out, not putting enough effort. You put all this effort into this character piece, and then you just ruin it with the most horrible camera angle. You just shove one standard camera and horrible lighting. Just getting nice lighting on the piece was always really difficult.
Kind of going along that, I hope people don't rely on motion blur, because I did as a student. I was like, motion blur, boom, throw that on there and it looks amazing. You're like, my animations are awesome.
That's so
funny.
Yeah, it's just to jump in with my own opinion here. Maybe it's just because I have such recent graduation regrets. But on the flip side of Denny's and sort of attaching to Careena's, I wish I learned more technically. There's times we're at work where we're like, it's broken, and you're like, well, fix it. I'm like, I don't know how to fix it. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, particularly for anybody who's at the Academy of Art University, that's the university I attended, and the university where T-Time was founded. There's a specific class called Maya 1 and CAPS, and they pitch it in a way where they want you to create like a full short film, like beginning to end, you're going to make this film. It's going to be the pride and joy. And it's like your second semester. Like, you don't know anything. No way. That's not what it's about. It's about learning the program fairly thoroughly. You should learn basic scripting. You should learn basic modeling. You should learn the basics of everything and stick to it. You should have a nice foundation on top of drawing, like your traditional foundations. You should have a good digital foundation as well. I think that would have been the most beneficial thing for me to have gotten. And if you have a chance, you should go for it. I have to start buying some sort of, scripting for dummies kind of book. So we sort of glossed over those already. So let's jump to one of my favorite questions. I think we ask every single person we interview with Tea Time, and that is, what is the worst / funniest mistake you made as a rookie on your first gig?
Oh, all right, I know mine. It's pretty bad.
Go for it. You don't work there anymore.
So I called out my boss for not knowing how to facial animate, and it was like my first job. And my boss was like, "You're an idiot. What are you doing?" I'm like, "You don't know anything. You don't know how to facial animate." So my thing to learn from there is, do not call out your boss. You are not better than them. Be humble. Be just kind of keep chill. Be very open, responsive to everything that you get. Learn, because you are a noob and you don't know anything, and you need to go into it knowing, with that attitude.
I agree. I think being humble is such an important attribute.
Yes.
All right. What about you, Careena? What can I gossip about later?
I can't think of anything that I did to stuff up royalty. Sorry. It wasn't perfect, but I can't think of anything that was funny or.
No monumental mess ups.
Actually, I probably I broke a rig, and actually this is a really good one. All right, so one of my very early characters that I got was on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I had a Fire Nation guard, and I broke the rig somehow, but I thought I could fix it. And regardless of the fact that there was rigging technical, there was a whole team of people who were responsible for this. I didn't want to admit, not only A, did I break it, but B, I didn't know how to fix it. And I think that was the lesson I learned there, was admitting what I didn't know. And because you can't learn unless you are willing to admit it. And one actually interesting topic on that was one of the people at work was being interviewed, and he got the job offer. But the reason that they said he got the job offer was because when they asked him questions in the interview, he admitted to all the things in the interview that he didn't know, and that was specifically something that they were looking for, was being able to admit in a professional workplace, because no one knows everything. I always am weary of anyone who says they're an expert, particularly something in the technical field, because every year there's a new version and everything you know is thrown out the window because you have to relearn the next Maya and the next Max, and being able to admit, I think, yeah, I broke it. I didn't even fix it. I tapped on the shoulder and got him to fix it for me.
Picturing you just being like, I just hit it in the game, far away.
I was sweating in buckets. I was so horrified at what I'd done, and I broke everything. I thought I ruined the game, but it was a really cool thing. It just reverted to a previous version, and I was just like, oh.
I like to tell the story about how I'm so shocked that I ever got hired as an intern, let alone full-time at Blizzard, because my first and biggest mess up is kind of like a combination of, it's kind of like Denny's story, but I did it in the interview. I was such a little punk. I was super nervous, but they're interviewing me, and they say, oh, we use 3ds Max. And instead of being like, oh, that's interesting, good to know, I was like, why? Why don't you use Maya like the rest of the world, asshole? I didn't say asshole, but I did act like such a little punk about it, and I got asked questions like, oh, do you play video games? And I was like, please, do I play video games? Like you should know me. What do you think? I don't play video games? I was such a jerk, and I think I don't know why I'm here, but Being humble and being honest. Good traits. Good lessons learned. Go team. So speaking of a terrible, terrible interview, the job hunt right now for students out there in the world is super, super tough. Did you ever feel like you were at a low point? And if so, how did you make it out?
I can touch on that. In Australia back in 2006 was when the sort of economic crisis bubble kind of burst and hit Australia. Australia was a little bit behind, and about 6 or 7 studios shut down and fired everyone. About 2,000 people lost their jobs. And the problem there was that the market was completely flooded with professional animators, and I was just coming out of university. And so the problem I had finding work was that there were people more skilled than I who were willing to take the jobs that I was looking to apply for. And my biggest hurdle was the experience that I didn't have. I had the degree and I had the portfolio, but I didn't have, I didn't have a title under my belt, and that seemed to be the real key to getting in. So the way I got in that situation was there was a position for a QA tester, which is not, I didn't know about it at university. Basically, the role of a QA tester is someone who tests the game every day, and they report on issues, bugs, characters falling through the floor, the audio not triggering, buttons not working, to your peers. And when I was doing that job, that was a 3-month contract. When I was doing that, I volunteered for the animation department to work on animations on my lunch break.
Oh, wow.
While I was in the studio, that's when I transitioned to become an associate animator after that. I was a QA tester when I got the Fire Nation guard for the Airbender, and that was the biggest thing. But that was, they always saw me, and I was coming into work at 4 a.m. in the morning. I was really eager to get that, because I knew my contract was up in 2 months. I was really eager to get that experience and be able to, nothing I was working on was supposed to get into the game. But eventually they put the whole character in the game, and I got in the credits as an animator. So I was like,
oh, fantastic!
Nice.
So that it's different between every studio, because Blizzard's QA department is like hundreds of people, whereas in Australia there was only 3 QA testers in our studio, and we only had 200 people. So it might not work for every studio, but definitely for the smaller studios. I was sitting right next to the animators, and I got permission to get Maya installed on my computer, and I was sitting next to the designers and the programmers, and we would blue sky ideas together on our lunch breaks, and I would always put my hand up to help a programmer who had an idea. I would animate their idea so they could pitch it to their boss, and so I got known as the person to go to for the animation that doesn't get used. But that was how I sort of made a name for myself. And I would highly recommend that if you're having a lot of issues getting in as an animator, particularly if there's a very competitive market. QA might be a good way just to get that experience.
Fantastic. That's a wonderful, wonderful suggestion. I never knew that either about you. I didn't realize you were QA in it. Cool. So what would you define as your moment of quote-unquote getting there, and how would you sum up that feeling in one word?
Like saying you made it?
Yeah, and you can say that you haven't. I know that right now you're working so many people's dream job.
So I love Blizzard, but I think the job before Blizzard was the one where I was like, all right, I made it.
Yeah.
And when I sum it up, I think, I don't even know. What's one word to sum that up? I don't know. Careena, you go.
For me, it was when I saw my name in the credit sequence.
Oh, that's a good one.
I would scroll through minutes upon minutes, like, oh, I don't know this person, I don't know, language people and people overseas I've never met, and then it was Careena Higgins animator. It was like, and the one word was I screen grabbed it and sent it to all my friends. That was like, officially animator, not just a hobbyist.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Yeah, I definitely felt that feeling too when I first saw my name in the credits.
Yeah.
It's like, are you sure you want to put me in the credits? Are you sure that name should be there?
Yeah.
All right.
We got a funny little diss / question. Like a little, I'm not even going to say it, Corey Reese, but it's very funny. I'll let you check it out later. There's a funny question we just got on the YouTube from Corey Reese regarding whether or not we could sneak into work and quote unquote fix a walk cycle from another game. No,
Oh,
I'm going to
no.
just answer that one. I lost my questions in the meantime. Oh my gosh. We had another question. It's very important. Here it is. Right. So currently, the film industry has been seeing a lot of turmoil. Have these issues had any impact over the game industry, either directly or indirectly, as a side effect? And do you foresee similar issues becoming more prevalent in the future?
Wait, say the first part of that again. Sorry.
Currently, the film industry has been seeing a lot of turmoil, and have those issues had any impact over the game industry, either directly or indirectly, as a side effect? I assume they're referring to things like the recent closing of PDI, etc. A lot of layoffs.
So I think the game industry is going to go through a change, and I think that's because of mobile gaming and all these small studios opening up and all these AAA titles. So Blizzard's considered a AAA title studio. Some of these can't sustain because they really have one game that they're focused on. The entire studio is focused on one game, and if that game doesn't succeed, the studio goes under. Blizzard, fortunately, is a large studio that has multiple games, so it can sustain itself. But I potentially could see that happening to the gaming industry too. It happened in Chicago. That's why I work at Blizzard now. The 3 studios that were in Chicago all closed down because they all were focused on one game, and it just didn't pan out. So a lot of people lost their jobs and had to move on. So.
Yeah, I think that's true for both industries.
Yeah.
So the second part of the question, which you sort of answered, is do you foresee similar issues coming to the game industry in the future? And I don't know. I feel like the game industry and the film industry, they're so similar in so many ways, but they also have very distinct differences. I also feel like we're very fortunate to work at an unbelievable company like Blizzard Entertainment that feels like sort of like the last steady beacon. But I feel like game industry, because it's newer than the film industry. Maybe not this. It's maybe as old as visual effects and stuff like that, like creature houses. But I almost feel like because it had sort of like a strange and rocky start, with people being like, those video games, like people never want those, or those too violent, and there's always been like this strange resistance to video games, that they've already had to deal with this sort of expanding and contracting of help, that they might be able to sort of tackle those problems a little better because they're more used to it. Does that make sense?
I guess the difference between the game industry and the film industry is a game studio can close down and another one can pop up in its place because someone else thinks, oh, I can make the next great game. But it doesn't really happen with film that way. Maybe not as frequently. So that's maybe why the game industry could sustain it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's good. People will always want to play games, I think.
Yeah.
So do you find that your work gets easier over time because it becomes routine, or more difficult because you feel like you have to keep finding ways to keep it fresh and exciting?
I think some things become easier, but it only highlights all the other things that you don't know. I think it's kind of 50-50. You do become. I think you don't realize how. Like, I don't realize that I am becoming faster at the time it takes for me to create an animation. When I first started, it would take me an entire week to create, like a good run cycle for a character, and now I can create it in a day. But there are other things like the acting and the full facial animation that I would still take just as long. So it just only shows you that when you focus on one thing and become more fluent at it, all those other skills are requiring attention as well.
I think it's actually a good difficult to when you go back and you work on stuff that you haven't worked on in a while. It's like, oh, cool. And worked on this. Yeah, maybe it's not second nature right now to just pump it out real quick, but it's fun to like rediscover this again, even though it's just a walk cycle. It's like how can I make this walk cycle different for this character? And it's just fun and exciting to kind of do that.
Mm-hmm. So which forms of sort of alternate what sort of alternate mediums do you draw inspiration from when you're not at work? Like other than animating, sort of how do you get your creative fix, and what brings you back to work in the morning to keep creating for your job?
Well, I take sculpting classes outside of work, and I sculpt in my spare time on pet projects and draw.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing I practice at home is I really want to get better at modeling. I still don't know how to texture worth anything, but at least it's like gray box modeling. So I'll come home and just kind of work on stuff, and I really want to get good at like high poly, like hard surface modeling. So like I've been working on like an iPhone, which is really cheating because it's all in the texture and it's all just like flat and shiny. But whatever, it's just fun to kind of do something different than animation, but still kind of keep your artistic going.
Mm-hmm. So,
Max?
go ahead.
Yeah.
What? Oh, Max. Yeah. I honestly like Maya. I can animate in Maya, but that's about it. Like that's where my skill sets just completely decrease.
So, for those of you who aren't familiar with our day-to-day bickering, we animate in a program, 3D Studio Max, and Denny was born and raised on it, and pretty much everybody else was not. And we like to rag on 3ds Max and long for the days where we had a good graph editor.
Oh wow!
Oh.
That's fired.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah. So maybe this is just because my shoulder is pretty sore. And we are in the middle of a decent crunch right now at work. But I think it would be really important, talking about alternate, getting away from work. I think it'd be good to talk a bit about work-life balance. Realistically, how important do you think that this is? And what traits or hobbies have you adopted to help yourself maintain an equilibrium?
So I personally think life at home is super, super important. It's one of the reasons I get into work super early so that I can leave work early. Because it's good to get home, kind of get away from a computer, just unwind and spend time with other people. Whether it's your significant other or just friends, just kind of getting away from the computer because you need to kind of recharge and just kind of regain your creative, juices so that the next morning you come in and just get right to it with working. You don't want to burn yourself out where you're constantly working. And the same can be said for like homework too. If you're working on stuff for class, just take a break, go get coffee, go talk to friends, and then get back to work. So I like it.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. There's a certain stigma if you leave work on time, particularly in the entertainment industry, both film and games, and I think it's really important that you don't feel guilty and don't chew yourself up emotionally about it and just leave and know that you have a life outside of the industry that will allow you to come back fresh and do a better job rather than completely tired and uninspired. And don't let it become a job. Keep it as a career. Keep it as something you would love to do in your spare time, not something that you do just for a paycheck.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also think it's super important just, for health. I have probably the most ergonomic looking workstation you could possibly imagine, with like the craziest looking keyboard and the stupidest looking, giant standing desk and, whatever. And even so, I still have problems with my shoulder. I get twinges through my elbow and my wrist. And I think just making sure you get away from work simply so you know that you can move your limbs later in life is going to be super important. I know that work is really great, and they have like all sorts of different physical activity things we could jump in on. You know, like there's a super fit and the boot camp and the gym, and getting sort of your daily exercise in outside of work, I think, is the super important part.
It's just important also to come to work with your A game, and because you know you're kind of representing yourself, so you don't want to be slacking if you know you could do better. So it's just better to kind of rejuvenate.
Mm-hmm. Super important. Fantastic. So here we go. Can you describe? I forget who asked me this question. I think it might have been Kyle Remus, but I don't know for sure. But can you describe the daily life of an animator at Blizzard, both the good times and the bad? Excuse me.
What was that?
What was that? I hiccup.
Did you want to go first, Denny?
Go ahead, Careena.
You could do like a one-word story because it's like the same day.
Daily life is coming to work and specifically.
I go to work and I animate and then I go home.
I think the joys is when you receive a new character. That's one of the really great things, is that one week I'll be animating, a cute little panda girl, Lily Stormsdown, and then the next week I'll be animating a big monster and completely changing up your style, and emotionally you change as well when you're animating a happy, cute little character versus a big ugly monster. That's the great, fantastic daily in and out. I mean, it'll change in 2 months' time. The hard times is when you're running out of time, is when your desires of what you want to animate doesn't match with the amount of time you have to animate it. That's the difficult, horrible things, when they need something in quick, but it's the most amazing character that everyone loves, and do it justice, but you only have a day.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No pressure. Yeah.
I guess for me, the good times would be like getting a character or anything to work on that you are completely passionate about, and you're like, yes, I want to work on this, and I already have 100 ideas of what to do. I'm gonna do it. Boom! You can just nail it, and you knock it out of the park. On the flip side, working on stuff that you have zero passion for or zero ideas is probably so difficult. Because you're never going to work, you're not always going to be working on things you want to work on, or animating things you want to animate. And so it's just difficulty of like still, doing the best you can while still trying to be creative, but knowing that you're not as passionate about that one thing as you were of the other.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about daily life at Blizzard is, you'll have this stretch of time where you're working on something that's really intensive. You're working on a hero. You're working on like this big deal, and you have a lot of time to do it and polish it and make it look like you want. But then also, you often, it's so rare, pretty much never, that you have like the one task that you're working on. It's always, you have this big task, and then you have bugs, and then you have, these little doodads. You have like these little things that you can do. So, so you sort of have this a lot. Do this big thing by now, but you also need to do all these little things by the same time. So if you have a time where you're not feeling particularly passionate, maybe you've been working on it for so long, and you're like, ugh, I just need a brain rest from looking at the same thing over and over and over again. You have this nice opportunity to go and just like really quickly like kick out all these bugs. Like, oh, I fixed that pop, and I fixed that IK drift, and you feel so good just throwing them away that by the time you get back to that character again, you're like, oh, I felt like I was so productive, when really it was just an hour, but you got to 20 things at once. I think there's a nice balance about what you're working on and what you're not. And the bad times, when you have a lot of medium-sized things that none of them are particularly exciting. Like none of them are a small task, and so you can't just do them and get them done, but they're not big enough that you're like, oh, I can really invest my time into this. It's like sort of like this animation purgatory of I don't give a shit. Yeah. Just my 2 cents on the topic. So we have about 4 minutes left here in our webinar. It's a bummer that Monsieur Cuevas didn't get a chance to join us. We'll have to have him on another time. But just as a quick little sign-off here, do you have any parting thoughts for anybody looking to get into the games industry, looking to start animating, just somebody beginning who wants to be where you are? Any last words you'd like to say?
I think don't feel disheartened when the first job you apply for is a rejection. I think take that as the structure for your next application, particularly if they give you feedback. I think a lot of people straight out of university expect to get a job straight away just because of the degree, and I think it's, as long as you keep at it, you'll get in as long as you keep trying. That's it.
Mm-hmm. To that note, don't be disheartened if like the 30th application you send in turns you down. You know, I probably sent in 100 before I got a call for an internship. So it's awesome. What about you, Denny?
Kind of going along that, I'd say get your foot in the door wherever you can, as evident by what we learned today about Careena. You know, you just, if there isn't an opening for an animator, she still got her foot in the door in QA, and look at her now. You know, she's now an animator at Blizzard. Like for instance, my first job, I was an animator, but like I was working with mocap, and I was really kind of doing like, we like set up chairs for like the team meetings and stuff, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not this. I'm like, I'm an animator. What am I doing? But you know, you take what you can get and you learn. That's really, you just be a sponge and absorb any kind of information you can get. So.
Yeah, fantastic. What is it you guys say? Champions find
a way. That is my saying. If you ever doubt something, just ask yourself, do champions find a way?
Hell
and
yeah.
If you're a champion, you'll find a way. So. Such a lame saying, but I live by it.
Hey, it's true. Nothing but the truth.
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. I suppose my last statement of how to get in the industry is connect with your community. And you can do that through a beautiful place like Tea Time Animation. I know, shameless plugging, but we're putting this on for you, so deal with it. Talking to people, meeting new people, being nice to everybody you meet, never being that little asshole on your first interview call. Like, be humble, honest, and talk to everybody. Go to every conference, go to every speaker, find every way you can connect online, and you will be a champion because you will find a way to get where you want to be. Again, this is Careena Higgins and Denny Jovic. My name is Lana Bachynski. I am the professional outreach coordinator for Tea Time Animation. If you want to reach out to us in any way to schedule a talk, see what talk is coming up next, if you want to get better connected with us, we have forums. We have a website that has our link to a resource library of building rigs and models that you can use for free. We have our Facebook page, which you can just search Tea Time Animation, and we should pop right up. You can follow us on Twitter at Tea Time Animates. We have an Instagram at Tea Time Animation. We have a blog, teatimeanimation.blogspot.com. You can find everything you want to know on our website. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would love to hear from you, and we are so excited to be here for you. Always free, always available. We just want to share the knowledge. Please. Thank you for listening. I don't know why I said please twice there.
See you at GDC, if you go to GDC.
If you go to GDC, the three of us will be there. GDC 2015.
We travel in a pack, so just look for us.
And we bite.
But
it's in a good way. So.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Denny and Careena. So happy to have you with us. And we'll see you next time. Happy animating.
Happy animating.